Welcome to another tactical fly fisher fly tying tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to be tying for you the Humongous woolly bugger. This is a style of woolly bugger that my teammates and I were shown by our guide during the World Championships in Scotland back in 2009. Not only was it really effective on the lakes that we fished there, but it's been incredibly effective on the lakes and the rivers here at home in the States as well. It kind of changed my outlook on woolly bugger ties and really has shaped the model for how I tie almost all of my woolly bugger patterns of any shade nowadays. So without further ado, here's the Humongous woolly bugger. We're first starting with Hannock 230. You could also use a Hens 254 or a Partridge Sprout. This is a size 8. I typically tie this fly in sizes 8 through 12. 12 for sort of smaller fish, 10s for kind of all arounds, and then 8s for larger fish or for rivers. That may sound small for most woolly buggers, but because of the long tail, the body becomes a lot bigger than you would have on a typical size 8 hook for a woolly bugger. Alright, so I'm just covering the hook with a little base of thread here. Now I've got 2 silver strands of flashabou. I'm going to tie them in and then fold them over and tie them in again. And that way you can get 4 tails or four strands of flash out of your 2 fibers, so you don't have to go chopping up your hank of flashabou. And you can usually get at least 2 flies out of a strand, or 2 strands in this case. Once you have your flashabou tied in, you're going to take some black marabou here, and there's a lot of ways you can cut up a feather of marabou to tie in woolly bugger tails. What I typically like to do is take the bottom portion out, just a little bit of it, since oftentimes it's kind of ratty. Then I will stroke the fibers back and just cut off about an inch or so, maybe a little less, 2/3. And so it ends up in this V, and it looks like I've got some chopped off fibers there, so we may have to add some more. But I'm going to tie this in with the tails all the way much longer than that flash, and then I'm going to break them off with my thumb. If you look at most buggers and other patterns just like that from the UK, that's typically what you'll find. And that's how you can take a sort of inferior marabou feather but still make it look good on the fly, because by breaking it with your thumbs you get rough, uneven tips instead of a flush, unnatural look like you'd get if you just were to trim it with scissors. So I've pinch wrapped both of those pieces of marabou in. I added a second piece because I had it a little bit chewed on that first one. The other thing you're going to see is I'm going to bring the thread back a little further than you might think is aesthetically pleasing. I intentionally tie the tail of this fly back a little bit onto the hook bend. Even though it doesn't look as good, it fishes better because I find that the tails foul much less around the hook that way. If I tie them up the shank a little bit, I find that marabou repeatedly likes to get fouled around the hook, and you can go 10 or 15 casts without knowing it, and then all of a sudden you wonder why you're not catching a fish, and you haul it in and the tail is fouled, and you get really frustrated. So I even though it doesn't look as good, I like to tie that tail back onto the bend of the hook a little ways. Then I'm just going to come in, and I want that tail about 2 to 2.5 times the length of the hook. So right about here, I'm just going to take my right hand and pinch it hard, and then break it off with my fingernails on my left hand. Now I've got that taken care of. I'm going to advance the thread back to the front and tie that marabou down the whole length of the body so that I give a nice even underbody. Now I've got some brassy sized silver wire here, UTC wire. I'm going to tie that in up at the front. There again, trying to keep the body nice and smooth and even. Now I've got some silver tinsel chenille here, and I'm just going to unravel that off the card. And what I like to do is come in and strip the first little bit off the front of the chenille, and that allows me to tie that chenille in without creating a whole bunch of bulk right there. Go ahead and whip finish at the front and drop this off the front of the bobbin cradle, and then use the rotary function to just advance that chenille the whole way up. Maybe crowded that eye a little bit with that. If you have fibers that are facing forward because they got wrapped down on, you can try and just stroke them back as you lay a thread fiber or two over it, or a thread wrap or two over it. Then you can kind of just come in with your hackle and measure it here right on the skin. This is a whiting bugger pack that I have here, and you want those hackle fibers to be about 1.5 to 2 times the hook gap. You really want long hackle fibers on this style of woolly bugger. What we're after here is maximum movement, both in the tail and in the hackle. If you look at this thing in the water, it really pulses as you strip. Those hackle fibers will collapse, and then as you pause, they spring back. So you get really strong, suggestive movement out of this fly, which is, I think, the secret to its success. Alright, I've tied my hackle in at the front, whip finished the thread off. Go ahead and make a couple or just one wrap right there at the head. That'll help cover some of the thread that we have there, so you don't get a nice big ugly thread head at the end. And then take your wire, and these are going rotated in the same direction, but because the wire is coming from the back and the hackle is coming from the front, it naturally counter ribs the hackle with the wire. This happens to be counterclockwise that I'm going if you're looking at the eye of the fly off the front of the vise. And some of those fibers that are straying forward there, you can just take your left hand and try and stroke them back and wrap over them so that they face towards the rear of the fly like you want them. Looks like I still have an errant one or two there. That's better. And all I'm going to do is take some hardest hole and cover a couple inches of thread there, and go ahead and whip finish. Then I'll just take my scissors, and instead of coming in and chopping this hackle to cut the excess, I'll just slide my scissors in and jab at it. And what that allows me to do is cut that hackle off without worrying about trimming any of those hackle fibers at the back that I want there. Alright, that's the finished Humongous style woolly bugger, and you'll see that you have really nice long hackle and a really long tail, but it may look kind of funny if you're used to a shorter tail and narrower diameter hackle, but I guarantee you that this fly will give you maximum movement and maximum fishing efficiency as a result. That's it. Thanks for watching this Tactical Fly Fisher fly tying tutorial. If you like what you see here, please find me on Facebook at our Tactical Fly Fisher page, or you can like our page on Instagram, and follow us on our website as well on our RSS feed. Thank you.